Hey everyone, welcome to Physics 306. I'm going to be the instructor for this course, Mr. Clow. I just want to make a very quick little video where I introduce kind of the expectations of what to get from this course. I want you to know kind of what's going on, how things are going to be run. I recommend that you watch this fully. That way, you know what to expect we go into our very first meeting on Monday. So there are two different websites that I want you to join. The two main ones are Edpuzzle. This is the code for it. If it has changed, I should put it up on the Google Classroom. This is where a lot of my lecture videos are going to be, and this is how I'm actually going to be taking attendance. Don't worry about getting these questions right, getting hundreds, getting perfect grades on these because it doesn't matter. It's used strictly for attendance purposes. It does not affect your grade at all. It's really there just for me to point to in case you decide to drop the course or if an issue pops up where you may need to withdraw. I can say whether or not you are here or not there. One thing I want to point out is that you're free to jump around in the videos, but one thing you may notice is that if you do that, even if you watch the entire video, uh, but you kept on rewinding back to previous parts, the video and the site may be marked as incomplete. It will still give you a grade for whatever questions you answered, but it may say that it wasn't completed. That's only because it needs, as far as I'm concerned, or I think it needs to watch the entire video straight through without any jumping around. If you do feel like you need to rewatch a video, I mean, you're free to rewatch it there, or you can go and there's links there. There will be links in my Google Classroom towards my YouTube channel that you can check out the videos, or you can go straight to YouTube and search for my name, and you'll find my playlist for this course. The next website that you have to join is Google Class. The code's here. Again, I posted and sent a link through Blackboard. I'm actually not going to be using Blackboard at all. Besides that initial memo to everyone, I'm really going to try to avoid it. I want to try and use Google Classroom as my main hub due to issues with uploading documents being a pain. And like I said, this is where like all my slides are posted. You can see it. This is actually also where I'm going to be posting a lot of homework. So if you go there, everything's already set up. The homeworks should be set up by now. I'll tell you the dates they're due and uh, what questions are being asked. In addition, you'll find each lesson, each chapter will have the lesson PowerPoints that I have for them in PDF form, I believe, as well as links to the videos. So you can also use this as a way to contact me. You can post a message on the board. Maybe another student could answer it, or I'll answer it when I get the chance. You can also email me if you want to contact me. One thing I would recommend is that if the questions can wait until the videos, until the our virtual meeting, then please do so. Only because I want to make sure that those meetings are used properly. All right, I'll talk about that in a second. All right, so there are the book that's going to be used for this course is Thermal Physics, the second edition by Kittle and Cromer. For the most part, this textbook's only really needed for the questions. So if you can find a way to get the questions without getting the book, be my guest. For the most part, I go through the material and I kind of reword it and rework it. So, if you want to get a slightly different way of explanation and you want to read the chapters, that's great. I just want to make sure that you're aware that the textbook's really only going to be used for you, at least, for the questions. Besides that, I pretty much go through the entire material myself in the videos and kind of, like I said, rework it so it kind of makes a little bit more sense and it becomes a little bit clearer. Now, as you're aware, this is an undergrad course for thermodynamics. We're going to be focusing more on the statistical mechanics, and the chapters that we're going to be covering are going to be chapters 1 through 8 in this textbook. So just to get an idea of what to expect as far as content wise, a lot of courses that you've done before in thermodynamics, whether it was the intro physics courses where you learned about thermodynamics, or you learned thermo maybe in chemistry when you took a chemistry course. Most of the time, you were looking at the macroscopic variables like pressure, volume, all that stuff. PV equals nRT. What we're actually doing is we're going to go all the way down and looking at a statistical approach to get those exact same equations. So we're going to look how the microscopic scenarios affect the macroscopic properties that we can measure. So we're going to try to kind of go into that. It can get a little bit tricky since it deals with a lot of statistical things, a lot of higher end math compared to, like I said, the PV equals nRT stuff. So be aware of that. This is a fairly tricky course. Like I said, I'm going to try my best to go over it. You may want to try and find some alternate questions online just to kind of get a more of an experience with them. One of the downsides to especially a virtual class, but I was going to say also a summer course, is that I don't really get the chance to go into as much detail with everything, as well as not being able to go through as many examples. And for the most part, the thing that separates a person who truly understands the statistical approach to thermodynamics and a person who doesn't really boils down to experience. Someone who does 100 questions is going to be more better off than someone who only does 2 or 3 guided practice questions. So just keep an eye out for that. This should be changed. The grades may not be posted through Blackboard. I'm going to try to use Google Classroom. This is actually the first time I'm going to be using it for the grade aspect. So cross that out. But though I will try to upload my grades as soon as possible. The moment I get the grades, they're up as quickly as I can. I know how frustrating it is as a student to have to wait until the very end to see how you're doing. So whenever I can get the chance to tell you what your grade is going to be in the course, I will. Typically, I try to do that after the second midterm. I'll let you know what grade you would need on the final to get certain grades, and pretty much where I'm expecting you to fall. Uh, the final is going to be worth 45%. There's going to be 2 midterms, which are going to be 35% each, not each, but 35%, and then there's going to be homework questions, which are going to be worth 20%. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail with each one of those. One thing I just wanted to note though is because of the way I do my test grading, which is I grade on a curve with the lowest being I think it's a 50, and because of the weighting of the final and the midterms are fairly close together, you will notice that the final is not going to be a make it or break it type exam. If you failed your first 2 midterms, then there's a good chance that even if you pass the final, it may not mean that you're going to pass the course. So don't expect like a Hail Mary type thing. And it also works the other way. If you did really well in the first 2 midterms and the final comes around, you're not super happy with it or you don't feel super comfortable, don't expect that you're going to end up failing because of it. It may end up hurting your grade, but it won't be bringing you from an A to a D or something. So just want to point that out. So the lecture, each of these lectures, each of my videos basically cover 1 week's worth of material. Now I did actually split it up into 2 parts that you may notice. So each lecture is actually separated in half. I just did that so that you could have piecemeal it. Um, but not all the material is going to be covered in the course. It's up to you to actually read the chapters before the class, obviously, or before the videos. Attendance really isn't mandatory, like I said. Um, watching the videos is an, I guess you could say, an optional thing. I mean, it's highly recommended because then you truly won't understand what's going on. But the grades that you get aren't going to play any factor. And again, all my slides and files are uploaded through Edpuzzle and Google Classroom. I'm going to try to upload them as soon as possible. Um, if they're not up there at some point, let me know as soon as possible so that I can correct that. So I'm going to be holding virtual meetings every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at about 10 a.m. Now this may change due either depending on student input or due to my own scenario. I have two kids at home and a family to deal with, so a lot of times things may pop up. So I will let you know beforehand when or if things change. But I'm going to try to keep to the roughly around the typical schedule for this class. And again, just like with the videos, these meetings are completely optional. This is really meant for you to ask me questions about the topic, about the homework, about the upcoming test, something like that. I mean, I would really like it if everyone showed up because one thing I noticed from last year was that every time people would come in, I would end up answering the same questions over and over again. So please try to make it a habit to meet. I know there are issues, maybe you're working and it may conflict, so I understand that. But do try to come regularly on time. Um, Pay attention so that you're not again answering or asking the same questions over and over. But if you have any questions, those would be the great times to use it. Like I said, you're free to ask me questions outside of the class, but I would like you to try to keep any sort of questions that could wait to save for these meetings. Because another thing I noticed was a lot of times the meetings would be dead, and I would end up essentially canceling them halfway through because I would get no questions at all. These meetings are essentially office hours. I'm not going to be teaching anything, or I'm not going to be going over the videos, but I will explain or answer anything. So um, it's really based off of student input. For the most part, if everyone comes in with no questions, then I'm not going to have anything to talk about during the meeting. So please come with questions or something. Um, and like I said, don't hesitate to ask. So the exams are going to be held during the normal class time. I'm pretty sure that's 10 a.m. I'm going to go check real quick. Um, and it's going to cover four chapters. So there's going to be two midterms and a final. And what the way it's going to work is that each midterm is basically covering half of the material, and then the final is going to be essentially the cumulative, covers everything. The main stuff from the four or eight chapters. So just to let you know what to expect, I'm going to put a class schedule so that you can see the dates and all that. Um, so the exams are going to focus on the material covered in those four chapters. But one thing I want to point out is that there's a good chance that questions from previous chapters may pop up in the second midterm, let's say. Um, that I mean that comes with the nature of the fact that the entire course is interconnected, and we end up actually rehashing a lot of stuff, back to back. For example, we end up learning about special systems, and we end up reusing that later on throughout the course. So I don't want to actually go into too much detail right now, but just be aware that even though I'm focusing on those chapters, uh, material covered from before may still pop up. One other thing that I want to mention is that um, the questions have no multiple choice. They're all going to be free response type questions, pretty much similar to the homework questions. You're going to need to show all your work. You need to go into as much detail as you can. Basically, you need to prove to me that you know what you're doing. Um, I think that's about it. Yeah, that's the most I can think of right now. Homework questions, they're going to be assigned through Google Classroom, and you're going to upload them into Google Classroom. So easy enough. Like I said, Google Classroom is pretty much the main page. Um, that's the one that you definitely want to make sure you have access to. Try to be neat with your solutions. For the most part, I'm just checking to see, that everything's kind of kosher and makes sense. One thing I wanted to actually point, so the due dates for the homework, I'm actually going to post it on the due dates on Google Classroom. The videos will say a different due date, and the lecture slides are going to say a different due date. Do not pay attention to those. Those were recorded last year using slides from the previous year, and I didn't really update the dates because I didn't know when the class was actually being held at the time. So don't use those as the numbers as the official dates. It's whatever Google Classroom says. If Google Classroom says it's due on a Friday, even if the slide says it's due on Monday, it's due on Friday. So pay attention to what the due dates say on Google Classroom. I highly recommend that you work in groups. It really is useful to have a working buddy to kind of bounce ideas off of. Honestly, when I was going through college at Stony Brook, through the physics program, there was definitely the saving grace for a lot of things. Being able to talk to someone who kind of understood me and who I understood, bouncing ideas off of, definitely helps. My big thing is don't copy though. Um, yeah, it really does you a disservice. And the fact that everything's graded on a curve means that if you're cheating and everyone else is cheating, then the curve ends up not being as good. So, in fact, there might not even be a curve if that ends up happening. So, just throwing that out there, avoid cheating. Some helpful tips. The only way to actually learn physics is to do physics. That's essentially my main motto. Is that you can't just watch me do physics and expect to understand what's going on. Just like how you can't just watch someone lifting weights and all of a sudden do that. You can't watch someone fighting and immediately get that ability. You can't watch someone do gymnastics and immediately learn that skill. You have to actually physically go into it. Just like with everything, the mind is a muscle. It has to be practiced. It has to be trained. So the only way that you'll actually learn this stuff is to actually do it. You want to try doing the questions before I do it. And then one of the other things I would recommend, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but if you find yourself stuck on something, which will definitely happen, especially since a lot of times we'll be working on questions kind of before you really get the skills for it. One of my recommendations is to not watch the video in its like not watch my explanation in its entirety. Try watching a little bit, see how I start the question, and then see if you can take it from there. You know, watch it step by step. Pause after the first step, try to continue the question. Once you hit another block, uh, you know, go back to the video, continue the steps until again you pause to the next part and then you continue from there. So use it as more like a guide rather than me lifting the bar up essentially for you to do a bench press. Um, the other thing is, again, goes back to what I said before: set up study groups, work with partners, anything like that. Kind of is really helpful. Just the very act of having to explain the material to someone does complete wonders to your own mental understanding. I can attest that I truly did not understand physics until I was forced to have to start explaining it to people. And my understanding of physics has gone beyond what it was when I was in college. Granted, I know for a fact that I have lost a lot of the knowledge I had due to not, practicing quantum mechanics in a long time and not dealing with the wave functions and all that type of stuff. However, my understanding of the basics of thermo of everything that I do teach has gone so strong that uh, it's not even comparable to what I was in college. So uh, I would say that working with a partner can benefit you even if you're not the one who requires help. Even if you're the one helping someone else, it will still benefit you. Let's see. Yeah, the other ones are pretty standards for most of the classes, though. Make sure that you're organized. If you're doing problems and you're all over the place, it's gonna be hard to follow your logic. And honestly, I'm gonna have a hard time playing Where's Waldo. And if I'm doing that, trying to figure out where things are and what you're doing, and if it ends up being where I need like a Rosetta Stone to actually decipher your language, then you're going to start losing points. So just try to be as organized and as neat as possible, and as thorough as you can too. And don't forget to ask for help. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Like I said, I don't mind answering questions outside of class, though I will point out that I may not get to questions right away. So I will try to answer them as quickly as I can outside, but I would definitely prefer that homework questions or anything that's not uh, necessary, like asking me something about when is the test, is definitely something that you want to ask me right away. Uh, but besides that, save it for the meetings just so that we have something to talk about. Also, it makes it a lot easier for me to explain things verbally rather than through an email. All right, and I think that's about it. So if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. As you could probably tell, this is on YouTube, so you're free to watch it. Uh, like I said, if anything changes, I'm gonna post it immediately onto Google Classroom and make announcements. So besides that, good luck, and I'll see you guys all in our first meeting. See you later.